good back iron. Horford comes up with the rebound, though, moves it back to Kyrie. He'll try corner three and hit it. His fifth of the half, and the Celtics lead by 27.
Well, he got this three thing down pat right now.
Celtics have the rebound. Kyrie, right-hand dribble. He'll slot drive. Teague is there. Kyrie turns, fade, money.
Kyrie Irving, get in the house. Get in the house. Stop it.
And Tom Thibodeau will do just that. He will stop it because Kyrie is turning into Kyrie here in the fourth quarter. 4:17 to go. Boston 104, Minnesota 92.
The hope that is that it's only going to get better. This was pretty fun. And
Kyrie against Burke. Monroe comes out, sets a screen. Kyrie leans into a left side three and drills it.
Kyrie's like playing by himself out there, man.
6 threes, 31 points for Kyrie Irving. Celtics by 5, 99-94.
Sounds of the Celtics radio network. And as you notice a theme, those are all Kyrie Irving highlights. There have been a few of them this year, without question, for the Boston Celtics.
None in the playoffs.
But none in the playoffs. Yes, absolutely zero highlights for Kyrie Irving in the playoffs. But I go back to Danny Ainge, it must have been a weird, and I don't know how these things happen. I don't want to even pretend like I know how it actually went down, if Kyrie's agent put this together, some sort of collective. I don't know. But somehow someone called Kyrie or called Danny Ainge and said, okay, here's what we've got. Okay, here's what we've got. We're going to give you Kyrie Irving. And from what I understand, like they went through a couple of pieces. We'll give you Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, and I think that the
big Zizic guy on Jay Zizic or whatever, the guy who's played 0 minutes for the Cavaliers in the playoffs.
Absolutely 0 minutes, and I think I want to say, if I remember, there was this rumor that they wanted to throw in Tatum or something like that, but they said no, we're going to keep Tatum, but we'll give you that Nets pick for this year. And I was telling you, I still love that because you were getting a legitimate all-star.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I as much as people, and I too loved Isaiah Thomas, to me, Isaiah Thomas was a product of a system that was set up by Brad Stevens to make Isaiah Thomas be the best Isaiah Thomas he could be. The same thing you're seeing right now from Terry Rozier and some of these other Celtics. Brad Stevens does a great job at getting the most out of players and finding ways to utilize their skill sets, again, to maximize production.
Right.
And Kyrie Irving doesn't need Brad Stevens to do that. Kyrie Irving's one of the few guys that you can put him on the floor, give him the basketball, and he can create
his own shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he can create his own shot and create it for other people. Before we get too far away from that, because I want to stick with the Kyrie thing. You mentioned Isaiah Thomas, and we know, the guy was a MVP candidate under Brad Stevens. You saw him go to Cleveland. I know he was hurt for the beginning of the season there, but in couple weeks of games he played for Cleveland, didn't look anything like the same player. Then Cleveland thought that they could trade him away, and they thought they were getting a better piece back in either. Combine the two guys, Jordan Clarkson or George Hill. We've seen how that turned out. To me, that speaks so much to, as we go through these playoffs and talk about what a great coach Brad Stevens is, to see him go to not one but two other teams, if you include the Lakers, and just be nothing, be a complete afterthought.
Yeah, I think that shows a lot, and so the Celtics have had this fantastic success this year. I'll go back to something I was telling you that John Barry said the other day on the ESPN radio broadcast of the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, that really rung true with me. I think a lot was made, including by me, that wow, this weird to see that team that the Celtics put together last year got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and that essentially Danny Ainge was blowing it up. He was going to keep 4 players off of that team and just restock and rebuild, and gone were the Kelly Olynyk's and the Avery Bradleys, and see you later, and move the Jordan, the Jay Crawfords and the Isaiah Thomases. We're going to keep Marcus Smart. We're going to keep Jaylen Brown. We're going to keep, let's see if I can remember everybody they're keeping. So Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. We're going to keep Al Horford. Good job. We're going to keep Al Horford, and I think there's one other guy that was on that team from last year. And what John Barry said was, it made sense, though. Go back and look up last year's finals, Eastern Conference Finals. One of those was a 44-point blowout. Cleveland just destroyed Boston. And so this new group, it just made sense that Danny Ainge blew it up. Go back to that trade. You absolutely make that trade because it's hard to find one of those guys, a legitimate NBA superstar that you give him the basketball and he can just do magical things. They only make a handful of them. There's only a handful of them in the entire NBA. And so to get your hands on one of them, I think it was fantastic, especially for what the Celtics gave up, which was a number 8 pick now that we know where the ping pong balls landed, and a bunch of players that aren't even on the Cleveland Cavaliers anymore. It was the biggest deal. We essentially traded Cleveland for an 8th round draft pick, or for the number 8 pick in the draft.
Yeah, right,
we got Kyrie Irving.
Nobody else left from that trade on their team.
And now you're telling me, and as I told you, this has been a great run. They of course lose Hayward at the beginning of the year, which I was telling you is a good thing. I didn't think at the beginning of the year that they legitimately had a chance to even win the Eastern Conference, even with the new pieces they had brought in. One, because I figured they had to figure out how to make things work. I expected Cleveland to still be good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when Kyrie went down later in the year, that was just ultimately, as you were talking about, and you and I have talked about, you just automatically said, well, Boston's done. They're done. They're not going to win anything this year. And in fact, many people didn't have them getting past Milwaukee. 7 games, Milwaukee pushed them. Then they get past Philadelphia. Nobody really gave them a chance to get through Philadelphia. Nobody really gave them a chance to get through Cleveland. They've got through 2 games so far. So it's easy to try to get ahead of yourself because everybody right now has automatically penciled in the Celtics in the NBA Finals. Let's hold on right there because first off, let me say, before we get ahead of ourselves, the Cleveland still has a chance. 1, because they have the best player in the world. And 2, because these Celtics are young enough that they do have lapses, offensive lapses specifically, and you saw it in the first half and specifically the first quarter of that game yesterday. Now, I think they are the better team, and I think once you go from LeBron James, the rest of that roster down, Boston has a much more talented team than Cleveland does. And that's just not me being a complete and all-out homer, because I am. I think the whole world is seeing that right now, that this Boston team is a deeper, more talented group than Cleveland is. But here's what I was telling you. This has now led to the idea that because they're playing so well, because people have already got them in the final, that people are starting to make these things you and I talked about, these fake news. They're going to trade Gordon Hayward and a conglomerate of a couple of things to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard. Well, now there's been thoughts of, how about Kyrie Irving? You probably wouldn't have to give away any other pieces. Just a straight-up Kyrie Irving for Kawhi Leonard or, whatever. All of a sudden, the stars, the guys you went out and got and paid the big money to, the Haywards, the Irvings, are now being talked about as tradable assets. Hard for me to grasp that, as I was telling you, because I just don't think you can. I was telling you, the only way you're going to know if it's even possible is if Boston gets through Cleveland and they get a chance to play against Golden State, and how that turns out and how much you either say, wow, they really need those superstars to be able to compete with a Golden State, or if they're playing well without them, then maybe I can entertain the idea. But I say right now, there's just no way. I haven't seen, I love what I've seen. There's no doubt about it. But again, we still got a ways to go before I start thinking about trading away Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, but that's what we do. And I think you're seeing production on the court that makes you at least be able to think about the notion, play with it a little bit, and think about the possibilities of, okay, if you look at Terry Rozier and you think Terry Rozier is the kind of player who year in and year out can give you the kind of production he has been these playoffs, and really the production he's been giving you since Kyrie went out, then you get excited about that. If you look at Jason Tatum and you say, you know what, maybe if we have a really ball-dominant point guard in Kyrie Irving, our guy Jason Tatum doesn't quite get the number of touches we want. And then you have Jaylen Brown, who was really – people aren't talking about him enough from last night, might as well have been shot for shot with LeBron James last night. Jaylen Brown was unbelievable. So, to me, boom, there's 3 stars who, if I'm a Celtics fan, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, you know what? If Brad Stevens really believes in these guys, then I think there's young talent there that can develop to superstardom. Then you add in Gordon Hayward, who I think fits in perfectly. So the way I envision this, okay, let's just play with the idea that Kyrie Irving gone next year, traded away. Starting lineup of Terry Rozier, and then swap Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward, however you want it, the 2 and 3, and Jason Tatum's big enough to play the 4. Al Horford is under contract through the 2020 season, which they owe him a lot of money, and that's going to be. I love Al Horford. I don't think the Celtics should actually trade Al Horford. But what I was telling you not too long ago is, with how young the core of this Boston Celtics team is, they're going to be. They're planning on being good well beyond Al Horford's contract. So anything you can do to maybe move him late in that contract, because there will be teams who come along eventually, and if Boston thinks that they can move for a bigger player who can replace Al Horford and be there long term and mesh better into the young core. Not that Al Horford doesn't mesh, but be a part of the young core that can stay together for a long time.
Like Anthony Davis. Who is written here on my notepad.
I
did not know you had written it
Think
down.
about the kind of value you can get when you move a guy like Kyrie Irving. And this doesn't even include how many draft picks Boston still has. Like I told you earlier, potential of 4 first-round draft picks next year, potential of a couple in 2019, a couple in 2020. The amount of stockpiled wealth that this Boston Celtics team has, to me, makes the idea possible, because I think this team got so much better when Kyrie stopped playing. I don't think a Kyrie-led Boston Celtics team, maybe they get this far, but maybe they're not dominating the way that they have been dominating, because what has been so pretty about watching the Celtics is they are the most selfless team in the NBA. And I mean,
the Golden State-esque.
Right. Like, okay.
Pass the ball. Everybody gets.
Right. You want to score. You want to score. You want to score. Good. We're all happy with it because that helps us achieve our ultimate goal. So Kyrie is so ball dominant, man. I mean, he really is a guy who needs the ball in his hand. He needs to get all his shots up. And I think that sort of takes away from maybe what Brad Stevens wants to do. I think he wants a team that is willing to buy in and play into that Golden State style of offense. And I think not that Kyrie can't do it, but what you could get back from trading away a guy like Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
And a couple of those picks, maybe. You could have anything you wanted. Anything you wanted.
The only way you're getting an Anthony Davis is by trading something like Kyrie Irving.
Which is tough because the Pelicans have Drew Holiday, and they're kind of committed to Drew Holiday.
Right. Yeah, I think, again, it's interesting to think about. I was telling you this would be a great opportunity perhaps if they were to pull off 2 more wins and get a head-to-head match. Because I was telling you, what better way to gauge how far away you are from a championship than actually playing for a championship against the current standard of the NBA, the Golden State Warriors. If Boston can get 2 more wins, they'll have that the perfect measuring stick, the actual 7-game series, to be able to see where they are, where they stand,
what
and
they
really
need.
Where they stand without those 2 superstars, and really can you trade? Because I was telling you, the feeling may come after that, like, whoa, you're going to need a Kyrie Irving or somebody like that to do again. But we're still a ways away.
But Rozier is doing enough to make you like not miss Kyrie, right? Like there's no part of you that watching the Celtics team that says, I really wish we had Kyrie out there.
Not right now.
Not right
I'm
now,
not even
right.
missing anybody right now, because this is, again, further than I even thought they would get with Kyrie on the floor. I mean, the combination of Terry Rozier being this offensive, I mean, very Kyrie Irving-like, reminded me a little bit of like a younger D. Wade. But again, that's a lot to put on a guy who's first postseason doing this. But Marcus Smart's play, which, again, you and I have talked about it. We talked about it with Norwood. The thought is, man, the Celtics don't want to pay this guy all this money. But, man, the way he's playing, and depending on how far this run goes for them, I mean, I don't know, Marcus Smart's playing almost Draymond Green. Like, you've got to have a guy on your team that can be that universal, that can be come up with the big defensive play. Marcus Smart is a glue guy on this Celtic team. So despite the fact that kind of like where Draymond a couple of years ago, where the Golden State Warriors gave him all that money, and my thought was initially like, how can you pay a guy who could very easily have a night where he gives you 8 points and 13 rebounds? How can you give him X amount of money? Well, because when you and the same thing with Marcus Smart, like, how can you give him that kind of money? Because he can do the things that he's been doing in this series. So yes, this team makes you think crazy thoughts as a Celtics fan, without question. Where I'm literally thinking maybe we should pay Marcus Smart $16 million.
I fell so in love with Marcus Smart last night when he got into J.R. Smith's face, and I really thought he was going to eat him alive after he shoved Al Horford in the back there. Marcus Smart, the glue guy, I mean, that's such a cliche term, but it's so true when you look at what happened in the aftermath of that little skirmish, that little scuffle between J.R. Smith and Al Horford. That game was teetering on the edge of Boston really pulling away and just icing it. They go to the huddle, and everybody is, dapping up Marcus Smart. They're all, like, sitting there, arms around each other. The Celtics were loving on each other, and the reason is it's because doing something like that for your teammate, seeing the old man, and forgive me, Al Horford, if you're listening, I don't mean any disrespect, but you're the old man on the team. To see him get shoved to the ground in the cheapest, most flagrant way possible, and the fact that wasn't a flagrant too, when that's the play that, of all plays in basketball, that's the thing that needs to get outlawed and somehow be refereed against to eliminate from the game. To see a play like that happen, and then have the guy who was off the ball come from out of nowhere. Yeah. And, I swear, if Tristan Thompson didn't catch his arm going back,
he would have been ejected.
He was throwing a haymaker right to J.R. Smith's mouth. Yeah. No one in Boston would have hated him for that. They would have loved him for that. That's the kind of thing that brings the team together. And once that play happened, and once Marcus Smart did that, I literally turned to Rachel and I was like, "That's the series right there. That's it. That's the thing that makes Cleveland just drop and realize that they don't have the poise to hang with this Celtics team, and it brings the Celtics together to the point where they close out that game in the way they did. And when Jaylen Brown was caught up with out on the court immediately after the game, Doris Burke was talking to him. The first thing out of his mouth is, "Well, we're already on to game 3." And I think that's the kind of spirit that this Boston team has that could make them do without Kyrie Irving possibly.
We're out there to play basketball. I just looked at it, Al's, he's a defenseless, person. He's in the air. He can't control how his body goes, and he's not even looking in. You go and take two hands to the back. It's a dirty shot. You just can't allow that to keep happening. This is not the first time JR has done some dirty stuff, especially playing against us. He's known for it, especially playing against us. We know that. It's like a bully. You keep letting the bully keep picking on you. He's going to keep picking on you until you finally stand up, and that's what I tried to do. One of my guys was down, and I took offense to it.
Yeah, Marcus. It's just interesting. Part of it is serving, my own interest and all that, but I hated him so much when he goes up in the stands in Oklahoma State. Remember a few years ago? Oh, and I was like, "What are you doing, Danny Ainge, drafting this guy?" Oh,
he's pit bull.
I love
He's
it.
He's a pit bull. You gotta love him. You gotta have that guy on your team.
We gotta take another break. We'll do that now. Come back. Stat of the day is next.